Hello, Miss Michelle. How are you doing?
I'm good, Elisa. How are you?
I'm good. You look extra special pretty today and wholesome,
Aw,
I must say.
thank you. Wholesome.
So, I have had a very interesting past few days. I don't know why I decided to do this, but well, through divining, etc., I found out that I had had a negative entity attached. So I went through the process with Raylene of getting rid of that. So
Hmm.
I'm so thirsty. So anyway, almost nothing in here. I got to get some water. Okay, but anyway, um, I went ahead and sort of used dowsing rods like Raylene taught me to
Hmm.
find and close um, all the open portals. Now, when she came to my house, she went through, and one of the, of course, open portals was on the E board. So for you guys who don't know it, it's like a Ouija board, but it was face up on this little place. And she said, "You can't put these things face up." So the dowsing rods crossed right over it, and then they to close it, one goes go like a windshield wiper, right, until it
Yeah,
stops. So
yeah,
anyway, we closed a bunch of stuff. Then we went outside, and where this old water oak that we cut down was called the grandfather tree. It went crazy, and she closed it. And that's interesting because at that point earlier, we saw this cute little screech owl, and they're predators, so they're not really birds of flight. So we could go right up to it, and it's so adorable. Anyway, the next day it was dead, so it's because of the bad energy there
yeah,
from that place.
yeah.
And Raylene, we talked to her about that, and Raylene said that there was some Native American horrible stuff happening there. So in our own backyard. So anyway, I decided to go ahead and uh, thoroughly search for um, the open portals, and it's really cool. It's so accurate. But it was like Swiss cheese in our house. Okay, so in Eric's room,
Uh,
there were several. One, you just kind of baby step, find those portals, hunting
yeah,
for the portal, open portals in
yeah,
the tale of hunting for the buried treasure, like you do to kids' backs. And so
yeah,
they crossed over the nightstand by Eric's bed, and
yeah.
I didn't really think why until later. Over his bed, over where he sat at his desk and shot himself, and
Hmm.
on the wall by his bed, which then I thought, well, that's where the bullet lodged. Interesting. And
Right.
the nightstand is where, when Arlene was 5, sleeping in the bed, she was very frightened by the water bottle spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning there, and the lights flashing off and on. So it was very interesting. He had like
Mhm.
3 in his closet, and there's a bunch of them. So, but I asked him if I had any in my body, and yes, I did. So I closed those, and I still had more, so I had to finish those.
Hmm.
And I wrote down the name. Finally, I said, Are we all? Is the home clean, closed, all the portals? Yes. Yes. For me, I asked earlier. Show me your yes. Show me your no. Yes. In our case, you have to ask for it yourself. They cross, and for no, they flip to the right. Yeah, to the right. So so he said yes, they're all closed, and for me, no, they're not. So I had to do some more. So and now they're okay. So I put different names on post-it notes, crumpled them up, put them on the floor, wide apart, and asked, uh, and there were 3 members of the family that yes, they had open portals, and it was, the ones that were yes, it was obviously they would have been yes. I can't divulge that, of course, but
Right.
and so it's just amazing. And I found out that you can actually remotely. And I asked, you know, are their apartments, their homes, or whatever, do they have open portals? Yes or no or whatever. And you can remotely he helped. You can remotely close these things. And so I was out in the backyard just closing them portals. I should start some sort of service. I swear to God.
Yeah, you could.
It's
You
really
could.
hard on the shoulders. Oh God, it's like, oh, hurry, 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 close that shit. Come on, come on.
Yeah.
Feel forever
Yeah.
in. So I've got some questions to ask. And you
Okay,
know what?
cool.
I feel the energy has shifted.
Yes, I bet.
You know, my hair's been thinning. And yesterday was the first time I noticed that there weren't like loose hair from my head, in the bottom of the tub.
Isn't that interesting?
And I didn't like want my glass of wine at 5 o'clock. I didn't care about it, you know. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
7? It's like, oh my God, how many minutes to fly?
Right.
I know.
Right. Right.
So,
Eric's just saying hi to you. He says hi, Mama, and
thank
he
you.
says he loves you. He loves you. And he was showing me before we connected, he showed me the portals in his room. So you just
Wow.
confirmed the spaces that he had showed me, because he was taking me through a little tour through your house, and he had mentioned about the property, about it being that there was ceremony, or there was something there in generations past on that area. So he didn't say the tree, but he had said on the property.
Oh,
So that's really interesting that you said that. And he also says, Mom, you totally could clear for anybody else. You can do it remotely. He says it is no different than energy, just like when we do healing and distant healing, we are all made up of the same stuff. It is all energy, all connected. So when you use your intention and you gather the information, he says, furthermore, you trust it. You believe it, you trust it, you know it, and you're experiencing the results of it. So there's power to all of that, because he says the power is not in the rods, the power is in you. It's
it's
you that does
amazing.
that. Mhm.
It's amazing, and with his help too. But I
Yeah.
totally believe it. But yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, there's a stream nearby called Buffalo Bayou. It's where it's very steep banks. I know because mountain biking behind Erik, I was like, I had a choice. Do I want to run to that tree or do I want to go down the cliff? Well, I decided to go down the cliff. That wasn't pretty. But they used that they herded the buffalo down the banks so that it would break their legs and be easier to catch. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and so our little subdivision was a farm where they had buffalo. Anyway,
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
yes, that makes sense.
Hmm.
And anyway, so what is a portal? Let's start from the very beginning.
Well, Erik says there are many different types of portals, but in what you're talking about right now, he says what it is it's energy, it's molecules. He says like energy that will go in different directions, but it has to do with ley lines. It has to do with nodes. He says it's basically he says it's a vortex, and he's showing me like moving molecules made up of the same stuff that we are. Um, he shows their portals having different vibrations to them. So portals can be in your home and be very good things. You
Oh,
can have, so it's not a bad thing that you find portals. So this, he says, also plays into the divination tools that you're using and the power of your intuition, and being able to sense the energy of the portal will help you identify whether this is something positive or negative, because he says, so much passes through the portals. He says spirit energy. He also says conscious energy, information can pass through
oh,
portals as well. So he says it's not true that when we think of a portal that we're immediately going to, it's going to be negative, it's going to be something dark. He says although there is a whole part to that, and he says and where there is light there is dark, and so that is very true. But he said just remember it is energy. He also says that portals can be like you had said, portals can be in people, on us. They can also be on objects. He says mirrors, and he's saying think about energy when you bring an object into your home from like a flea market or something,
Oh, yeah.
and you've got energy on that, that can create, because the portal is on the object. So he
Mm.
says there's so many different ways that we can have a portal in our midst, but he also shows cosmic portals as well, because he says in the universe, and he shows it like a, how do I describe this? It looks like a graph with a hole, and it's got these streams coming out the sides of it, and I can see it spinning. And he says that it's like going in from one space to another, one dimension to another, which is
Oh, wow.
basically
Oh, yeah, I've seen
what,
that.
yes, and that's what happens really with a portal in our home too. It's made up of the same stuff, but he talks about the sun,
Uh-huh.
energy from the sun connected to the earth, and he's showing that as a comparison. He says think about our chakras and the energy that runs through the top of our head and down to the ground. He says think about when you ground yourself and you send energy down to your feet, down to the earth, and that white light going way up. He goes, that has to do with the energy, or the ions, the what comes off the sun, what
Oh,
comes
okay.
off the earth. So that's how they're
Like starlight,
structurally made
like
up.
scalar energy, I guess.
Yes, 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 yes. He
Yeah.
says that's right, Mom. Yes.
So how do I know that when we're closing these portals, that we're not closing the good portals, or the good energy, or the information or consciousness portals?
Well, he says, first of all, what he directed you towards were the ones that were wreaking havoc.
Yeah.
So the ones that were,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So he says, because your intent, what was in the back of your mind, wasn't curiosity of, okay, like let's look for portals that are doing good and portals that are doing negative. You had in the back of your mind, what's around here that needs to be shut down,
Mm.
and that was based on the information that you were given. And so
Okay.
he says that's what was directing that energy. And he says, and to provide you with the information to follow that up would be exactly what you have noticed, a shift in the energy. You've noticed significant changes with yourself. And he also said about sleeping, about you're going
Yeah.
to notice some shifts in your sleeping
Yes.
because of this as well, because it's, he says it's unseen energy. We can't see the portals. He says some can. It's not that it's
Oh,
completely that it's not unable to be seen, but for the most part we can't see it. But what he does show me is, he says it looks like a vortex. It spins, is how we would see it, how most people would view it, or like a light. But he also says you still have spaces in your home, but he's calling them vortexes, not portals. He's using the
okay.
word vortex, that has energy that is of a positive stream. And he
Oh,
says,
good.
and so those there hasn't been this lower vibration energy that's been caught up in it, that has
Okay.
been flowing from it. This is where we get a lot of the conscious information. And he says, in spirit, divine spirit
Okay.
can
Well,
walk
where are
through that.
those? I want to bathe in it for a while.
Your kitchen area,
Okay.
he goes right into the kitchen area, and right into your living area,
Okay.
in your living room, and in your office. If you
Okay.
look in your office around where you sit there, because he says, think about the energy that's created when you sit and do these videos.
Oh,
When
okay.
you're talking, you're bringing that energy in. So he says it's a buildup of all of that energy.
Are you talking about the living room or the den, where the black couches are, where the timeout chair used to be, or the other, where the rest of the
Right
room?
off of the kitchen, he's showing me
Okay.
right
Okay.
right beside the brown couches.
Oh, the brown couch. That's right. That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, what about, the bad guys need to leave when we hush them out with Palo Santo sticks?
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to close the exit portals, right? So, once they're gone, it's like them can seal them. So, how does that work?
Well, he's saying when you close the portals, he's showing like doing the smoking afterwards.
Oh, okay. That's what I did. Good. Okay,
Yeah,
good, good.
yeah, yeah. So whatever, however that works, but he keeps saying your intention is such a big part of it,
Okay.
because the technicalities are more of a, what is your ceremony?
Okay.
So
Get the
us
hell
saying
out of my
this,
house.
yeah, exactly, because we could say this and he says, and then somebody else could say, yeah, but I do it this way and it always works. And he goes, right, because it doesn't have to be
It's
the
all
one size fits
intent.
all. It's all about your
Yeah,
intent. Mhm.
exactly. Okay, let's see. Uh, all right, so how do they occur? I mean, how do people's homes get these bad portals, and how do they collect them in my body, in their body?
He says that's a really good question, and he says it's a lot easier than people think. He says that there's at least 1 to 2 portals in any given home, unless you are consciously checking for this stuff all the time.
Yeah,
So he said a couple of the ways. So okay, he says, just as we spoke about the property, so he says, was there some sort of a traumatic event that happened close to the property? Was there a lot of fear? Was there a lot of depression? He says mass death. Um, so he says, when you look at some of these events that happen around the world where there was a lot of death that happened at once because the energy of fear or something that may have occurred slightly before, that is like a pulse, a high frequency pulse, and
mm,
that he says, he's giving me like a snapping sound, like
yeah,
it snaps that open. He said the other thing is let's say we've got some open energy and somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, and he says this like with a Ouija board, because he
oh
says they're not
no,
bad. He goes, none of that stuff is bad. Divination is not bad. But when you say you're in a space in your mind or you're playing around with things, you're inviting things in without understanding the intentions and the processes to it. He says that's when you can get yourself into a little bit of trouble, and you can start to open up doorways, open up portals. And he goes, the next part is once an energy, an entity starts to walk in and there's that free flowing, then this can start to create portals within the body. Now he says this doesn't always come from the home. This can also come from out and about in the body, can be from illness, emotions. So let's say
okay,
there's an entity or something in the house, there's some emotional stuff that's already been going on. So he says this can open that doorway bigger, or this can create more doorways. He says this is why you would find different spaces in a room, and he's pointing to his room like depression,
yeah,
certain energies that were very stagnant and thick, and
right,
so they would start to create these holes. And he's commenting like what you had said, like Swiss cheese,
yeah,
like it would just be like a piece of Swiss cheese, because it's the balance is off, the
yeah,
balance starts to tip. And when you don't have the awareness or you're not really understanding exactly what's going on, he says this is where so many people will go in circles trying to figure out what's going on in their life through medical situations, depression, all kinds of things that we go through that we think about the third dimension physical reality type results when it's actually multidimensional. And so he says, the other thing is too, is even when you're playing with divination or you're calling on spirit, this is why the foundation of the physical body and the foundation of your energy, your structure, your understanding your emotions, why all of that stuff is so important. It's not just the focusing on calling in spirit and working with all that stuff, but it's doing both, because that foundation creates a structure, and that structure helps keep you safe, it helps keep you protected.
right,
um, so he says there's a lot of different elements that can play into it and that they can grow. This goes the same for the vortexes or the ones that there's a lot of conscious stream. He says, okay, collective consciousness. He says fear of
Mm-hmm.
collective consciousness
Oh
can go
God.
through them as well.
Oh yeah.
So if we find that somebody is sitting and watching television, he says, particularly right now is a good example, because are you sitting watching television and you're watching the media, and that fear button, that panic
Oh
button
God.
is
Yeah.
going up and up and up and up. He goes, well, you can create a portal right there on your couch, right there in that spot on the wall right behind you. You're creating this big hole where a lot of the collective fear starts to come in and out. So he says um, it's not impossible to close them, of course, but it's a lot easier to open them unknowingly.
So I know that mirrors and closets are common locations, and of course, where awful stuff has happened. But what about televisions? Are they common places for
Mm-hmm.
portals?
Yes, televisions. He says anything with reflection.
Oh,
He also says water as well, although water tends to hold a vibration of purity, but
oh,
if you get stagnant water,
oh,
so anything that has a stagnancy to it. So he says the reason why closets is because there's often a buildup of energy. It's a smaller space, and he's showing like the shape, the corners. And do we clean out our closets as often as we maybe clean other areas in our
yeah.
house? So things can pile up and build. And he says a lot of dark energy tends to hide and
Oh.
it builds. And so
Well,
he says that's why spring cleaning is a great idea. Pull out those closets, people, clean
oh,
everything up.
ugh. Well, can't you, like Eric, with your help, can't we remotely clean? All right, we're going to use these dowsing rods, and we're going to just clean the
Yes,
entire house.
yes. He goes, yes, absolutely. He says, now he wants to also say, and he says this with no fear, he just says sometimes we can have a situation, and he's giving the example of, say, a home that is on a property that maybe there was a traumatic event. There's ley lines below it, so there's a lot of energy.
Amityville horror.
Yeah, he's giving like that type of
Yeah, yeah,
energy.
yeah.
And he says, and then there's a stream of water along beside it. He says, think of the vortex,
Oh
think of what
yeah,
that creates. And he goes, so doing it in that way maybe isn't quite enough. He
yeah.
says there
Ooh.
may need to be more, um, something physical done, having somebody go in. He goes, so in those cases that's possible. For the most part, most people can do it themselves, or they can connect with somebody that connects with energy on a regular basis and can just clear it for them. But
Okay.
he says it's very common, because he says, peeps, if you get out your pendulum, your divination rods, he says you'll start to notice that you've got them all over the place. I've got one right up here in the corner too.
Oh
He's just
boy.
pointing to you right now. Yeah.
Okay. Just bury a bunch of tourmaline under
Yeah.
them, I guess, something like that. Okay. I wonder how many people with diseases, mental, emotional illness, spiritual illness, really are just have portals. What percent, of those are really just people who
He says
suffer portals?
more than half, more
Wow.
than half. Yeah. And he also says he goes, Mom, it's like layers too. So, clearing the portals is one thing, but then we go into, is there's a portal in the body? Are there emotional triggers? Are there stagnant energy that are, he's calling it like sitting in the chakra area from traumatic events,
Mm-hmm.
from pain, from loss, anything that gives lower vibration in your life, sometimes even past life stuff. So there's many
Oh,
layers
yeah.
to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have a child. What's your first couple of clues that, well, this kid might have some open portals?
And he says, first of all, if you have a child that You're noticing that there is a behavior change that has come abruptly. He says, with or without there being an event. And he says, because something can happen that can trigger that opening. But also, if your child is starting to behave erratically, he says, particularly not sleeping, having issues sleeping. A lot of parents would go to, my child just is not sleeping. I don't know why. My child has not slept in weeks, and that fatigue is something that will get built on. So he says, if you're noticing that your child is suddenly starting to present some behaviors, especially when they're young and they've been on some sort of a schedule, or you can pretty much predict. And he says, as a parent, you know, parents have that telepathy to understand what their children need or what their schedule is. So this is really being mindful and watching your children if you start to notice something. And he says, it's not if you have a couple days that are off. We're talking when you're starting to see a trend in behavior being
Right.
erratic, or things just not adding up, and there's not a medical reason why that would be happening.
Wow. I mean, Lucas changed overnight. I mean, literally overnight after Eric died. But he didn't
Yeah.
seem to be bothered by Eric's death. It's like, oh well, we're that close anyway, that kind of thing. And also
Mhm.
Michelle changed overnight, the day after Annika was born, when she was 8 years old. And who was it? Who else? There was somebody else. And Eric. He just pretty abruptly. He was so happy, and all of a sudden, boom, he just changed.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, that's interesting. What about an adult? What would be a clue for an adult having a portal or two or three?
He says a lot of the same things. So
Okay,
if you are, if you're starting to
all of a
find
sudden,
that you're,
alcohol abuse.
yeah, like you're starting to lean on something that you maybe normally wouldn't, like alcohol, things that are out of your behavior, anger. He
Okay,
says snaps of anger that are out of context for you. Um, he says short fuse is something that's really common, because a lot of the entities that become connected through one in a portal within their body feeds off of that type of energy, feeds off of the um, that buildup of anger. And he also says depression, unfounded depression. um, Anything, again, he says, when you've got something out of the ordinary and you can't figure out exactly what that is that's going on, or things are starting to change in your life, you just can't seem to get yourself into a vibration that you've been able to flow in quite easily, and there's really no explanation for that. He says you want to check it out, you want to see what's going on, because chances are you've got something open, you've got something attached. And he says, think about, it's also where you're traveling. So maybe it's not coming from your house, but have you been somewhere that there has been some low vibrational energy? Have you been somewhere? Have you been spending some time? He shows some people that go in and out of work. They may have a place that they don't prefer working in, or a lot of people don't prefer working in. He shows like factories, a lot of like
yeah.
stuff that's repetitive. He
Oh
said there
yeah.
can be a lot of portals there. So you may find, you changed your job, everything's going okay, and then boom, something starts to change, and you're blaming the job particularly, without realizing that you got something open, you're bringing something home, something starts to change.
That's weird because a lot of parents say, "Well, my kid is so good at school but horrible at home," or vice versa.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. Okay. So, what about you have a home full of portals, but a person living there, the inhabitant does not? How would that affect that person over time?
You mean if the person didn't have any open portals but the home did?
Yeah, over
And we're
time.
we're speaking, okay, so he says, yeah, that's possible as well. But he says, think about how you feel when you're living in a home and it's continuously messy.
Yeah,
He
it is.
says, think about that type of feeling.
Does the drawers and closets count? I'm kidding.
No, he says only if it bothers you. Only if it bothers you.
I don't
But he
know.
says he says, and it's not to say that everybody needs to uphold this certain idea of how your home should be, but he wants to give the visualization of this chaotic feel.
Okay.
He says, think about the kids that don't want to go down to the basement because there's this corner over
Yeah.
here that's really creepy. He
Mm.
says that's some of that. There's a portal, there's something there. He's actually showing the hot water heater in the furnace room in the house that I grew up in, because I
Ooh.
was terrified of that space, and he's showing me that there was portals there. But he says that you're not spending all your time in that space, so you may be avoiding certain rooms in your house. He says, think about, are there spaces in your home that you don't like to go? Are there places that you don't like to reside because maybe you're residing in one area of the house that feels positive and the other areas aren't? He says, but after a while, if you're in that type of energy and it's thick enough or heavy enough, it will start to affect you. It will build up
Okay.
eventually.
Yeah. Well, my second eldest daughter works in the emergency room, so I'm sure that does her emergency room have a bunch of portals?
Yes, he says yes, and some of the people as well.
So I can help get rid of those, I guess.
Mm-hmm,
I'll put
mm-hmm,
that on my list. It's on it. All right.
mm-hmm.
What about where my husband works at B. Riley? He didn't have any portals.
No, he's actually saying he's saying Papa's okay, and he
Oh,
also says like he's saying Papa's beliefs that everything bounces off of him.
I
Like
know,
it's like,
I know, I know. He
yeah,
probably comes in there and all those portals run and hide and slam shut.
yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
can you actually permanently seal a portal?
He said, yeah, you can. He says it depending on how long it's been there, how big it is, how strong the energy is to it. It might take a bit more than once, so it may not be as easy as doing it in the way that you did. He says the ones that you closed were very easy to close, and so you may have to do a little more work to close it, but yes, you can.
So how often would be a good schedule to like just check for portals and close them? Like once a month maybe, or what do you think?
He says dependent on a couple things. He says so it wouldn't be a bad idea to throw it into your schedule of when you would do your spring cleaning. He says when you would change the tires on your car. It's these type of things that you do in your house as a quarterly thing, as the seasons change. But he also said when something changes, when you feel something, he goes, pay attention to how you feel, pay attention to how the rooms in your house feels. And so if you start to notice family members or yourself, things are off, go around and give it a whirl. And he says, go on a little portal hunt.
Okay, I'll just use my dowsing rods. How
Yeah.
often should I ask the dowsing rods, Eric, do I need to check portals in the house and me and any of the family members? Bing,
He
bing,
says,
whatever.
do it once a month, Mom.
Okay, good, because it's already on my iPhone. Good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are there, can you create those? Okay, how do you avoid creating portals in your home and body? Just, I think probably eat right and I don't know.
All those things. He says it's about your personal vibration and the vibration in your
Your
home.
vibration up, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any techniques besides using dowsing rods for closing portals? I mean, I
Yeah,
love that one. It's easy.
yeah. He says that one's really good. Same with you can use a pendulum as well.
Really, how do you do that?
He says to work to ask for open, show me close.
Oh,
And you use your intent, and then you can swing the pendulum. You can use your intent. You could use like Palo Santo. You could smoke the area. And then he says, ask the pendulum to show me, is it open? Is it closed? So he
wow.
also shows like doing something on paper, like with arrows, following it. I'm not sure if I can explain it properly how he's showing me, but it's like showing the directions in the
Oh,
room
okay.
to follow to different areas with the pendulum. But he says that it really helps having a divination tool, because if you're not, he says some people can really, really feel it, are quite
Ah,
sensitive to it, and they really notice when something has changed.
hmm.
But if you're just starting to clear your home and to look for portals, the dowsing rods, he says, is the easiest way
It
to
is
do it.
so great. I asked him,
Yeah.
you know, how I write on post-it note, crumple it up and whatever. With those, he said he really loves the dowsing rods, and he probably means when he works with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what? Okay.
He says you're a wizard, Mama. You work like a
Oh, it's
wizard
so
with those.
easy. Well, that's just the, you know, closing portals for dummies way. So, let me see. Oh yeah, one thing he said too with the post-it note stuff is that it also makes me less accurate when using the pendulum and all that kind of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
those are less accurate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
he says the dowsing rods are the best. Yeah.
yeah. So does it also make it more difficult for mediums to answer questions of sitters that are just chock full of portals, open portals?
It can, because he says if one's energy is not balanced, because if they've got open portals, they'll be balance will be off. And so he says it also depends on the medium, because different mediums are good at different things. So,
Yeah.
if you've got one that's tuning into energy that picks up on that stuff really easily, that can read into your body, into your aura, into your chakra systems or your emotions, then that one will be able to pick that up really easy. Whereas possibly another medium might
God,
just be,
scared the crap out of me. Stop it. Oh,
it
God.
made me jump. Here we're talking about portals.
Oh, that just opened up another huge portal. God.
Eric's laughing.
Oh my God. My heart jumped. I can't remember. I forgot they
Oh,
were
it's
here. Sorry, people. Don't put any mean comments. Oh, God. I just a little.
Anyway, so yeah, he said, so let's say another medium that's like really good at conversing with spirit and communicating with spirit might be having like some challenge pulling through that information, because he says the sitter is the ground.
Yeah.
So it's like a battery
Yeah.
when we're communicating. And so when there's something off with the sitter, whether it be something that's in their balance or their beliefs or anything else like that, it can make it more of a challenge for the medium to work through.
Oh, yeah. I bet. So, so I just want to verify, are all my portals now, um, the ones that were open, closed, and the ones in the home closed? That's okay. I can go back and do
Yeah,
it.
no, he says yes. He
What
says
about the
yes.
ones of the people, of the family members and the homes that I closed today? Are they too?
There's one seems like you might have to go back.
Is
He
it
says he says you know which one it is. When he says it's right, what's in your mind right now, Mama?
okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah,
All
yeah,
right. I'll believe it. All right,
yeah,
go back to square one on that one.
yeah.
Is it a girl or a boy?
Girl.
Okay. Okay. I can do that. Well, I'll do everybody. Not just in case. Who cares? Okay. So what happened with this whole thing? He told me was I started to develop open portals in my childhood
Mm-hmm,
because of my
mm-hmm,
freaking psychopath parents,
mm-hmm,
and then with every trauma from those portals, I developed more open portals. And those created more traumas and more challenges and
Right.
more loss. And it just got to be a vicious cycle. And of course,
Right.
that brought portals into my home, and that created portals in my children. And it just got
Right.
to be, I mean, I'm sure it contributed even to portals in Erik, which brought negative entities in his life and contributed to his death, sadly. So it's just been, thanks, Mom and Dad. Such assholes.
He says part of the layer. Goes,
Yeah,
remember, it's not one
I know.
linear line.
Past
It's just
life
layers
stuff.
of
It's
it.
a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But now we're gonna make it all good.
Yep.
All
Yep.
right. Well, that's all I have to say. Anything else you have to say, Erik?
No, he's actually he adds one thing. He says that to go back and check the other family members. So he says just give it another check with the rods, because he
Oh
said
yeah.
that you may have, if you have to go back and do it again, because he says it's not necessarily for sure, but he's even saying to check it again. So go back a couple times and
Oh,
just check, double check. Yeah.
will. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good to find out, but it makes me a little sad that I had anything to do with it. But what can you do?
Well, yeah,
Right.
and he just said, remember, he goes, Mom, you can't take responsibility for that. Everybody takes responsibility for themselves.
Yeah, I
You
know.
can't take responsibility for that.
All right. I love you, Erik. I love you, Michelle. You guys
We
check her
love
out
you too. Love
at
you too.
thehealingh.art.com. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye bye.
See ya.